Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We got some great friends of the show on today. Matt Stoller's going to break down those big tech hearings yesterday. A lot to get into there. Very interesting. Saagar's going to tackle that in his radar as well. We also have Jeff Stein on to update about what exactly is going on with the potential economic stimulus, and that is where we want to start the morning.
Yeah, let's start off here with the stimulus package. Things are not looking good for a full stimulus package. The president basically giving it away. Pushing something known as a skinny bill here in Washington, where you take like the two things that people actually agree on, try and pass those in the very beginning. He talked about that a little bit yesterday before deporting the White House. Let's take a listen.
We want to work on the eviction so that people don't get evicted. You work on the payments to the people, and the rest of it, we're so far apart, we don't care. We really don't care. We want to take care of the people. The Democrats aren't taking care of the people. The payments aren't enough. The payments aren't enough. You understand that? They're not making the payments. They're not making them high enough. The Democrats are not taking care of the people. Nancy Pelosi takes care of herself, but she doesn't take care of anyone else.
So there's a lot to break down there. Now, number one, I mean,
deciphering Trump.
First, yeah, I know. I'm like, it's like reading the tea leaves, and it's like trying to be a psychic or something.
You're good at this, though. Break it down.
Yeah, having covered the White House, here's what I think he means. No, so when he says the rest of it, where we really don't care, that we're too far apart.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying there is that they're pushing a skinny bill, and the reason that I think that is that Mnuchin and Meadows have been basically saying, well, maybe we'll just do a short-term unemployment deal. The realization is beginning to dawn in the White House just how much of an economic catastrophe not renewing unemployment is. However, and I think we were talking about this morning, Dems would frankly be fools in order to do something like this, because that's where all of their leverage comes from in terms of trying to shape a broader economic package. However, I mean, I don't want to discount every day that ticks by that we don't have those checks continue to go out the door, even at a reduced level that they end up agreeing upon, is a catastrophe and a disaster for workers. So it's a very complicated situation.
It is, and even what he's saying there, it's not totally clear exactly what he's talking about, because the two pieces they actually agree on would be extending the eviction moratorium, which, by the way, is not contemplated in the Senate bill. So let's start there. But it's something the White House has been saying, at least for those who are homeowners with federally backed mortgage products, maybe not for renters, which is 30% of the rental market, by the way. So the eviction piece, and then the payments. Now, when he says payments, I think what he means is the stimulus checks,
I think so too.
Not the unemployment, because the stimulus checks, yes, everybody is more or less on the same page. It's in the Republican bill. Obviously, Democrats are on board with it. White House is on board with it as well. That leaves open, actually, the unemployment insurance extension. And let's not forget, that expires tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow. Mark Meadows was also out yesterday admitting they're nowhere close to a deal, admitting essentially that is very likely to lapse, because I think even if you imagined that Democrats might go along with the skinny bill, which, as you point out, politically, it doesn't make sense for them to do so. They have no incentive to do so. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. But even if you imagine that they were willing to go along with that, they're still nowhere close to agreement even on that unemployment insurance plus up. It's been $600, as you all recall. If that goes away, first of all, unemployment, not only was it the $600 plus up, but it was expanded to include a lot of workers that don't ordinarily get included in that. Contractors, people who do gig work. So that piece goes away. And then the plus up, Republicans want to move it down to about $200 a week. That's a huge cut. That in an amount of money that people have been depending on. They want to then transition to what would be 70% of income, which would force state unemployment systems to grapple with that, which would be a complicated change, but that would happen. Their plan is over time. But there is no agreement there. And we've gotten a lot of differing messages from Democrats, too, over whether this is actually a red line or whether they might be willing to bargain on the $600 or less.
Yeah, we really have no idea what the Democratic strategy is. And again, they're not really telling us anything.
No.
And I think the other thing that's this is what drives me crazy about Trump, is he'll come out and be like, we need to have bigger checks. I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with you. The issue is that the White House is impotent, right? I mean, the Republicans are not listening to him. They don't care what he has to say, because in general, the White House is not using its political capital in order to try and say, no, if you don't vote for this, then you're against the White House. I will call you out publicly, right? They tried to do that with the payroll taxes. It didn't work. And at the same time, Meadows and and Mnuchin, his two chief negotiators on Capitol Hill, I have not heard once from them saying that they want the stimulus payments in order to be larger. And of course, that would be a good political issue for the president. But once again, it just seems to be completely impotent, trying to reap the rhetorical rewards of saying, I want higher payments, but not actually doing anything in order to get higher payments. And just to give you an idea of how screwed this process is, let's throw up on the screen what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, what they've been saying about the deal. I have no words for this one. I mean, it's like a giraffe and a flamingo, Pelosi said to the room, which included Schumer. They're both at a zoo. A dumb person may think they can mate for offspring. A smart person knows that it's impossible. That's our bills. They're unable to mate. Schumer also had an anecdote about, I think it was a chihuahua
and a lion.
A chihuahua and a lion. And yet then Pelosi pointed out that actually a lion is a breed of cat, so they wouldn't be able to meet in the beginning, but also whatever. I don't even know.
I'm glad we have our best minds working on this, I think is the point you're getting
best and the brightest. Just the absolute best and the brightest. I mean, you couldn't ask for anybody else to be in charge of the entire global economy at a time like this. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. It's a clown show. I mean, you have Trump out there on the one hand, just, it's kind of like a weird observer of the process, not an active participant.
Right.
Then you have the Democrat. I mean, you have Pelosi and Schumer making weird dog metaphors. Also, I have no idea what they're pushing. I have no idea. I have no clue what will pass Congress. Neither does anybody else who is observing this thing. When we talk to Jeff Stein, I guarantee you he's going to tell us exactly the same thing. This thing is a total mess, and we can't forget what the stakes of the economy are right now.
No, that is exactly right. As I just said, the unemployment insurance is going to expire tomorrow, and we are going to learn today just how bad the picture is. We're going to get the new unemployment claims today. We'll bring that to you. But we are also going to get a GDP report that is expected to show that our economy on an annualized basis contracted some 30+%. That is the absolute worst in history. So they are expecting 35% contraction. Again, that's annualized. So if it contracted at the same rate in the second quarter for the entire year, the economy would diminish by 35%.
I don't think that's ever happened in American history.
It's literally never happened before, right? Uncharted territory. We have never been here before. And look, a lot of that comes from April, when the massive shutdowns all across the country kicked in, and everybody, of course, pulled back on their spending, lost their jobs, all of those things. There was somewhat of a recovery in the next 2 months, but we are talking about dire circumstances here. And of course, look, it'd be one thing if you were like, okay, but the economy's humming again and the virus under control and people are going. That's not where we are. It is like we are back at the beginning of this thing, and meanwhile, they're dithering. And here's the thing that drives me crazy too, Saagar. It's not like they didn't know the unemployment insurance was going to expire. It's not like this came out of nowhere, like, my God, who could have predicted this? You set this date for it to expire. You set the date for the eviction moratorium to expire. You knew this was coming. You knew it was coming, and you could not get your act together. They were on vacation.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. It's not just Congress, the White House, too, which is that it was like, I see these reports, it's like White House slowly realizing how important unemployment was. I was saying that here, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, before this thing was all going to, I was like, man, it's going to be a problem. The whole economy's going to go off a cliff. This whole economy's going to go off a cliff. I read the same thing that they do, right? I read Bloomberg. So do you. We can read the New York Times. It's not that difficult.
It is not.
How the economy works is pretty simple. Money goes in, money comes up. That's it. And yet they seem to have this antiquated view of how it all works. And of course, everything is running exactly the same. The people who are already at the top are doing better than ever. This is from the New York Times about CEO pay, which is while millions of Americans continue to be fired, furloughed, underemployed, have wages cut, CEO compensation has not seen any significant cut to the chief executives within the Fortune 500 companies. So there you go, right? It's just absolutely ridiculous, which is you see some CEOs out there symbolically being like, I'll only make $1 this year. But by and large, outside of a few symbolic gestures, on aggregate, they are making pretty much the same amount of money that they were the year before. Maybe some differences in stock price, but that has nothing to do with how much they're actually getting paid. And average people are just getting screwed.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. And you see, there was a piece in the Washington Post recently about the housing market where like higher end housing in the suburbs is booming, right? Absolutely booming as people are moving out of the city. PMC is perfectly fine. And I mean, this is just going to massively increase inequality and with heartbreaking consequences that you don't have to wonder about. They are happening before our very eyes. New York Times has another piece about how there are 30 million Americans who are suffering from food insecurity right now. 30 million Americans did not have enough to eat last week. Okay, that is with the unemployment insurance in place. That is with having received a stimulus check in many cases. 30 million Americans didn't have enough to eat last week. And they also, this was the LA Times, they also had a good piece in the New York Times. They interviewed families and workers who are depending on those $600 payments, who've been able to stay in their homes, been able to stay current on their bills. And in some cases, yes, we're making a little more than what they had been making before. Previously, they interviewed one woman who lost all three of her jobs. She'd been working 3 jobs, cobbling it together, lost all 3 on the same day. They interviewed another family. The primary breadwinner, he had his dream job working for a live events company. He has a medical condition. Not only does he lose his job, he loses his health insurance. And basically the central theme for all of them is we are not going to be able to pay our mortgage or our rent. We have no idea how we're going to make this work. We are facing financial ruin. And yet here we are. If this happens tomorrow and they are nowhere near a deal, you don't even know what anyone is advocating for at this point. The Republicans can't agree with each other. The Democrats are irrelevant, out to lunch as well. Trump doesn't even make any damn sense with what he's saying. It is such a mess, and it is so outrageously upsetting to me that this is where we are.
Yeah, it really is. And you know what? I mean, like you said, no heroes in this story, and nobody's coming to save you, and there are dire consequences for many, many years to come because of what's happening transpiring just in these last few weeks.
That's exactly right. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.